Hello, my name is Katie Budress. I'm the editor-in-chief of Glassworks magazine, and I will be reading for you from issue 20 of Glassworks, a poem by Anne M. Terashima entitled Far from the Garden. I jump rope by myself, alone, red arc over and over against the flat blue sky. Carefully, I lay my rope in the grass, a perfect red line, and run off to cross the monkey bars. Returning, I find a garden snake, mimics my rope as if conjured by my ceremony. A slim hum of latent power in grass warm and wet as breath. We share a dark-eyed silence. When will we shed these skins and slide away? Miraculous, what we do to fit in to this life.
I'm Hilary Sideris. I am reading my poem Linguistics from Glassworks Issue 20. Linguistics. Noam Chomsky argues only human languages combine limited phonemes to render infinite ideas. Our fellow mammals, dolphins, went back to the sea, that they comply when we say, swim to the white frisbee on your right doesn't count. They can choose not to breathe and die.
Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin Mraz and I'm an associate editor with Glassworks magazine. Today I will be reading a poem from issue 20 by Anna Sandy-Elrod, and this poem is titled While Out of My Country's Reach. On Playa del Postigue, the torn skin of a golden plum opens, spills. Its sticky juice onto my wrist, down my arm. I try to catch it with my tongue, blossoming sweet and warm from the sun. Sand sticks to my body, whole and delighted. And in my country, a family is at the grocery store, filling a cart with what keeps them alive, and then suddenly ripped open, as easily as the fruit in my palm. I am afraid to go home and love, my husband afraid to hold an American child, small and hopeful, and pretend night after night that we will all make it to tomorrow. I dig my toes farther in, the hot beach, then my feet, up to my ankles, and anchoring, a burial, blistering.
Hi, my name is Jay Jones and I'm the managing editor for Glassworks Literary Magazine. Today I'll be reading an excerpt of Dani Putney's essay, Asian Bones. I didn't understand my mom's Filipino heritage as a kid. Being mixed-raced on the West Coast, I was simply a tan boy to neighbors. Nobody knew my mom immigrated from the Philippines. If anything, people assumed I was Mexican or Native American. Sometimes people would think I was Spanish. For a while, I didn't know I was different either. Your family's normal becomes not normal when you go to school. I talked to classmates about some of the foods I eat at home. Pancit and rice was a typical dinner. How was I supposed to know other kids didn't love sour noodles too? How could I have guessed it wasn't an American thing to eat rice with most dinners? To younger me, rice was life. Steam rising from my mom's rice cooker was a nightly kitchen portrait, an image I could only appreciate fully as a 20-something reflecting on their childhood. I recall a conversation I had, maybe in 3rd or 4th grade, about how I thought pizza and ranch was a disgusting combination. A boy was dipping his pepperoni slice in the heart attack sauce and getting the stuff all over his face. I had to speak up about this culinary tragedy. That's gross, I said. But don't you eat weird noodles? He replied. You're one to judge. I started to feel shame about my mom's choices. In fact, I was flat out embarrassed. Did we have to go to the Filipino store again? It smelled bad, I couldn't understand what people were saying, and I'd only eat some of the stuff she bought anyway. I felt awkward and out of place. My mom, though, was in her element at the mini-mart. She spoke a language I never heard at home, but it suited her. She smiled in a casual way I hadn't seen around my dad and brother. If I could characterize her presence in one word, I'd say she was relaxed. It was like she was at peace. As an adult, finally reckoning with her identity, I can see how whitewashed my youth was. The Asian part of me was something I'd learned to hide because it wasn't congruent with the identities of those around me. As cliched as it sounds, I wanted to be like the white boys whose dads hosted barbecues and moms wore pretty sundresses when taking them to soccer practice. Why did this other half of me need to exist when it didn't seem to exist amongst my peers at school?
Hey everybody, David Osgood from Fuquay Varina, North Carolina, reading Resurrecting the Warbird from Glassworks, Spring 2020. I was 13 when the cancer took my father. Old enough to comprehend, young enough to shatter me. He spent hours in his workshop building model airplanes, wearing thick bifocals and sticking his tongue out as he pressed glue to plastic. I sat in the stool next to his and created blackbirds, hellcats, and blackjack bombers. We never talked, we concentrated. He pointed and patted and slowed things down with his hairy hands. I stopped building planes with him when I turned 12. I think it bruised him. We talked more but connected less. I didn't know he was sick. He built the last few planes by himself, alone with his disease. I would pass by the workshop and roll my eyes. He never looked up from his work, but he knew I was there. Did he wait for me to open the workshop door, hoping to hear the familiar creak of its rusty hinges, getting a little bit sicker each time I didn't turn the knob? I sat on the sleeper chair next to his hospital bed. Right before he died, he whispered, "I finished it." He told me where to find it, in a wooden box under the hobby table. The World War II military Warbird had taken 2 years to finish. The last time I worked on it was the last time I worked on anything. My wing wouldn't stay on and I stormed off, never to sit next to my father again. Yet here I was, holding his hairy hand as his soul exited his body. I found the Warbird and marveled at its intricacies, staring at it for hours. Good and bad memories collided and became jumbled until I couldn't tell whether my time with him was mostly happy or mostly sad. I told him I didn't want to end up like him, just a big kid stuck in an old man's body doing childish things. I wanted to wake him up, take it all back. Tell him it's not stupid, it's cool. It's not childish, it's timeless. I carried the Warbird outside and waited for the wind to change. Cyrus Bly and his cronies skateboarded down the street, flicking lit cigarettes at each other. I stayed still, hoped they wouldn't notice me. Cyrus raised his arm and the whole crew stopped and jumped off their skateboards. "Hey guys, look, it's little Dick Ritchie and his baby airplane," Cyrus announced. I tucked the plane close to my chest like an unfit mother holding her child for the last time. Cyrus snatched the Warbird and pushed me down. He crushed the plane over his knee and kicked the wreckage. They laughed, threw high fives, and skated off. I shuffled the broken pieces around on the lawn like a detective, inventorying a dismembered body. I carried them to the workshop, placed them gently on the hobby table. With his bifocals on my head and my tongue out, I began.
Hi, I'm Steve Royak, Senior Editor of Glassworks Magazine, and I'll be reading Redundancy, an essay by Jeff Fleischer from our Spring 2020 issue. Regina Maplewood had pored over dozens of files for more hours than she cared to count. She had questions about several, but the one that most befuddled her was that of Charles Finnegan and Hartwin, the only pair of employees housed in the same folder. She had come from the Home Office in London with the unenviable mandate to research and declare staffing redundancies. Thus did she find herself on her first assignment in the field at the Northumberland Herald, contemplating the value of everyone from the editors down to library archivists like Charles Finnegan. Her interest in Hartwin, therefore, made obvious sense. After all, who was more redundant than an imaginary friend? After a series of interviews and days of research, the day came that Ms. Maplewood found herself seated across from a man who didn't exist. Charles, after his interview had ended, held the door open for his friend and told him he'd be waiting just outside. It was for his benefit that Ms. Maplewood greeted Hartwin and suggested he take a seat. Offering him a cup of tea was a joke for her own benefit. She sat in silence for a few moments, not sure what she was supposed to do with the empty chair, but still able to see Charles talking to coworkers on the other side of the door. "Well, Hartwin, what should we talk about, eh?" she began, doodling absent-mindedly on her notepad. "I've heard quite a lot about you these last 2 days. I expected you might be a little more whimsical, maybe a talking animal or a mythological being, but no, it seems you're just an imaginary 30-something librarian. Bit disappointing, but hardly your fault." "So, Hartwin, what do you think? Should I recommend making you redundant? Or Charles? Maybe the Herald doesn't need a research department at all. Or maybe we bring someone in from the Home Office who doesn't see imaginary people. Are you even a person? Maybe you're a rabbit or a stoat or a feral hedgehog? Who's to say?" Enough time had passed that she felt justified in ending the charade. She went back to her stack of personnel files, determining which employees she would still need to interview before her train back to London the next evening. The door opened a crack and Charles Finnegan entered. "Why? What happened?" he asked quietly. She wasn't sure what he meant until she saw him wrap his left arm around just enough air to contain a full-grown man, then exit while whispering something to the area he had corralled. On her last day at the Herald, Ms. Maplewood's routine remained the same. She returned to the records room for a final perusal of files before preparing to begin her report on some serious redundancy recommendation, when head researcher Elaine Boyer walked in. "Are you proud of yourself?" she began before Ms. Maplewood had even hung up her coat. "I understand you have a job to do, but there's no reason to treat him disrespectfully." "I don't know what he told you," the younger woman replied, "but I showed Charles nothing but respect in my interview. In fact, I was rather more impressed by him than I expected." "Not Charles," Elaine interrupted. "Hartwin. The way you spoke to him." "Excuse me?" He told Charles all about it. A feral hedgehog indeed. "I don't know what Mr. Finnegan thought he heard." "It doesn't matter. See for yourself." Before storming it away in a huff, Elaine indicated the sheet of paper someone had slipped under the door of the records room. The letter was brief, but direct. "I've tolerated enough ridicule in my day, but there is a line. Today, madam, you have more than crossed it, and I shall no longer provide my services to this concern. Charles is free to make up his own mind, but as for me, you can go right ahead and make me redundant. I suggest you do the same to yourself. Have an unpleasant day. Piss off, Hartwin." By the time the staff began to take lunch breaks, word of the letter had spread throughout the Herald office. Ms. Maplewood could tell as much from the muffled snickers and dirty looks various workers afforded her. Whatever fear her presence had created in those she was reviewing clearly traded places with ridicule. Just going about her final rounds, she heard more than one variation on "the invisible man told her to piss off." Even as she dragged her bags to the front of the office and waited for a cab to the train station, she heard passers-by laughing.
White chickens. Before us is a wilderness we're prepared for. Looks just as it did 10 years ago. Even the cabins facing into these woods look the same. In Capitogama, we're the only change, the only mock and drag of nature's relentless lore. As mother and daughter portage our canoes toward the lake, she tells me the story again, from her childhood, the one where she gets caught in the undertow, and tells it with such fear, believing the repetition will somehow mitigate the water bent around my ankles if I let it. On our way, we pass pine. Aspens crowd granite islands. A cabin unfolds into the brush, its yard replete with picnic waste and chickens glowing in the dusk. A small boy chases them. I smile when he finally catches one, then twists its veiny neck and tethers the bleeding beak to a nearby stump. He's too weak to hold the flapping thing, so it escapes, shakily, and returns to the rest. When we arrive at the water's edge, I promise to be careful, but no, I'd rather be with the chickens.
Hello, my name's Amanda, and I'm an associate editor for Glassworks magazine, and I'll be reading The Open Beak by Barbara Daniels, which is from issue 20. The Open Beak by Barbara Daniels. A bird carver bends to the ugly body he twists in his hands. Chips at feathers, a missing eye. He licks his split lip, nearly spiritual in his patience. A swath of light tongues me at winter's low angle. I smell burning. Whisper of flame, gibber of swallows, hiss of blue gas. Do I hear the dead? It's just a lie I tell. Here's a curlew, cinnamon brown, feet wired to driftwood. It almost opens its long beak and utters its mournful call.
Hi, my name is Jason B. Crawford. I will be reading my poem in Glassworks, Spring 2020. And the poem is called Untitled, Namwick. In response to the act of a nigga saying nigga to a nigga. Son, I am the stone carving you will always find cut in the middle of your throat. You can cough and hack and swallow trying to loosen me out, but I've grappled every ounce of your esophagus. I will die here. Don't bother giving me a funeral, because I've been dead before. I know of ones made of the mouths you speak so violently. How dare you call me something you can't hold? Rough air stitched in unprocessed cotton. There's not enough saffron and water to coat a baby ragged. And to give it new flesh would be a disservice to its mother, the fever tree, rooted, hoping to not find another of her children left a funny jaundiced thing. But you use this history like a toy. You like to play with me around your tongue until you think it is time to spit out. Yet I am the aftertaste, a smooth set of spikes digging into the palate. Tell me, child, does your mother know that ghosts see you as an offering to make white, to tear the flesh until it is only the meat left unseasoned? More and more, I'm finding your voice to sound like a snowstorm. That is to say, I hear the white when you call my name. A murder of crows flocking from the windpipe when you speak me up. It will crawl itself into a noose and wait for someone to push on the other side. Stay left hanging from a tree like a burning flag's wet dream. Like a country built on the bones of ships filled with fingers. Or a bone ship full of fingers not ready to build a country.
Hi, my name is Patrice Claeys, and I'm going to read my poem called The Visit. We sat sunning ourselves in the window that frigid May. My needles clicked while you ripped stitches your hands got wrong the night before. We talked of recipes, daughters, the tearing down of the temple for hospital parking. I found myself playing up to you by being harsh with my familiars, that man and those children who wiped me out each day. My moxie a badge of belonging after all else failed? We ate like kings, a feast of meats and sauces, cakes I baked and served. You, the vessel never filled. Such a quiet thing growing up, you boasted between bites. I'd put you in a corner and forget you were there. I steadied you behind a cart as we trolled the market for bargains. A shirt with no sleeves, a purse with no clasp. You offered many gifts. I took only the silver band with fire opal edged in gold. It reminded me of fairies, a soft thought I could never share. I can't believe you wanted a ring, you scoffed, as if I had asked you to call me by another name. In that evening's play, one character killed 4 people. Each blanked at the knife thrusts. Did you just stab me? They'd ask as their heads lolled, eyes fluttering like pale moths. When you left, I carried the box of old toys to the terminal. Your unsure hands fumbled the ID. The wheelchair attendants, yes dear, take your time, froze me with fear that smelled of cold stones. As I lifted your feet, you cried, I'm sorry, embarrassed. I touched your gray hair, startled by its softness, so fine, like down lining a nest, only waiting, waiting.
Hello, my name is Sandra Cimadori, and I am going to read my flash fiction story, The Day My Tia Maria's Face Fell Down. Tia Maria's face fell down on a hot July day when she changed clothes in front of a window fan. Abuela called, and I could hear her frantic voice over the phone as I stood close to Mommy. We rushed to the subway. I was 5, so I imagined we were going to Tia Maria's apartment to help pick up the pieces of her face and put them back in the right spots. I touched my nose, mouth, eyes. It would be funny to mix everything up. Mommy cursed the heat, the subway, the city. The doctor used the word droop when talking about the right side of Tia Maria's face. But in Spanish, things don't droop, they fall down. And that's how it looked to me. Eye, cheek, mouth, all falling down, down. Can you not smile at me, Titi? I asked. A tear ran down her paralyzed cheek. Abuela blamed it on the fan because cool air on a hot body is dangerous. She also believed night air was full of diseases and that people could make you sick with the evil eye. Mommy wanted to know where that bastard Hector was. Hector was Tia Maria's husband and a minister. He is down in the Bowery, saving the souls of whores, just like Jesus Christ did, Tia Maria said. He is a man of God, Abuela said. He will pray and Maria will get better. The doctor looked at us in a way that made me think he did not like us much. It made me sad. Have you experienced any recent head injuries, he asked. Like being pushed out of a moving car, Mommy said. I slid when Hector made a sharp turn, Tia Maria said. Or being shoved down a flight of stairs, Mommy said. She tripped, always so clumsy, Abuela said. And how about being knocked to the floor, Mommy said. Then she raised her hand before anyone could speak. Oh, yeah, sure, you fainted. Abuela caressed her daughter's ruined face. It was the fault of the fan. Cool air on a hot body can be deadly. Hector is a man of God. He will pray and Maria will get better. Mommy cursed. The doctor left. And I prayed that my Tia Maria would someday smile at me again.
Hi, my name is Cassidy Torelli and I'm an associate editor for Glassworks this semester. Today I'm going to be reading a poem from issue 20 called Bosc, Pears by David Alper. Not all of my picks have been options for a good grandson to take. These pits are in the form of my eye, viewing the naughty core of being. Don't weep for what you can't grasp. All fruit falls sometime. That's what I reaped by watching you live like a pear tree. And when no one was tracking me, I trekked into the sweet reeking heap, steeping around shredded cinnamon-shaded pieces, smashed seeds, ripe enough to take your fallen fruit within me.